Griff had known deep down that he and Cash were never going to be a thing. She'd tried to tell him that, but he'd been blinded by hurt pride and mixed up by this uncharacteristic restlessness that had taken hold of him. So when he'd walked in and discovered Cash in Link's arms on New Year's Eve, at his little sister's wedding no less, the growing resentment he'd been harbouring towards his brother had sent Griff into a blind rage. What he hadn't been aware of was his brother's own internal struggles. Griff's anger had unleashed a furious violence in Link that had seen him beat Griffin into unconsciousness. Ending up in hospital hadn't been the ideal way to spend the first day of a new year. Neither had watching his whole family implode. Griff hadn't realised the strain his brother had been under over the past few years, suffering post-traumatic stress disorder after his years as a commando. It had been a shock to realise Link wasn't the invincible hero that Griff had somehow always thought him to be. It had changed his whole perception of things. Still, it had probably been for the best that things had all come to a head between them out here. He hated to think what might have happened had Link been pushed too far by a complete stranger on the street somewhere. As bad as it was, things would have been worse had his brother snapped around someone else. He might have ended up in jail rather than in therapy. The approaching growl of a large engine alerted him to his father's arrival, and Griff wearily dragged himself from the cabin to await the inevitable lecture. It didn't matter that Griff was 27 years old and had been pretty much running the place for the past few years. When it came to stuffing up, you were apparently never too old to get a sermon from your dad on what you should have done. "I told you it was too wet." "He was all right yesterday," Griff muttered, trying to keep his cool. "One day you'll learn the art of patience. You're always in such a damn hurry." "Yeah, well, the bills and the weather aren't exactly patient either, are they?" "One more day would have saved you a morning of stuffing around, though, wouldn't it?" Griffin took after his old man, which was why they argued so much. But that was where the similarities ended. Link was the one who took after their dad in looks. Griff was more like their mother's side of the family, taller than both his father and brother, and, in his opinion, far better looking, although Link would no doubt disagree. The two brothers had always been like chalk and cheese in everything, even down to the type of women they preferred. In his day, Link had worn the stereotypical military man-whore medal, happy to play the field and play hard. His line of work had made it impossible to maintain any kind of long-term relationship. Griff, on the other hand, had only had 2 serious girlfriends. He'd been shy and tongue-tied around girls as a kid, and that hadn't changed much as a grown man. He wasn't after anything complicated. He just wanted a marriage like his parents, built on love, trust, and a good solid partnership. He'd thought he'd found that with his previous relationships, the first starting way back in high school with Olivia Dawson, his neighbour and best friend's twin sister. They'd grown up next door, and everyone had thought they'd end up together. But when Griff had gone away to agricultural college, Liv had broken up with him. He'd been heartbroken and utterly confused. Later, he'd met Tiffany, and for 3 years they'd been inseparable. But then she'd got a job offer too good to pass up. Overseas. Maybe if he'd been willing to leave Stringy Bark Creek, he'd have been able to save the relationship. But Stringy Bark was in his blood. Farming, here, was the only thing he'd ever seen himself doing. He hadn't been celibate since then. He was a healthy red-blooded male, after all. He'd been seeing Ashley from the pub on and off, but it was just a casual thing. She was nice enough, but she wasn't into exclusivity, and he really wasn't into sharing, so it was never going to go anywhere. Nope. It seemed like he was destined to become a crabby old bachelor farmer who lived on the same property as his parents for the rest of his life. Fantastic.